Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about the tragic events that took place at the AstroWorld Festival in Houston last weekend. Now, last weekend in Houston at the AstroWorld Festival, 8 people wound up losing their lives, and a 9-year-old boy is clinging to his after a mob of people wanted to surge toward the stage at the AstroWorld Festival. Now, when I take a critical examination of the tragic events that took place at the AstroWorld Festival, they eerily mirror an event that took place here in 1991 when I was in high school at the City College of New York. Now, back in 1991, there was a hip-hop celebrity basketball game hosted by Sean Puff Daddy Combs and Heavy D that was supposed to take place at the City College Gymnasium, and because your Puff Daddy Combs and Heavy D oversold the event venue, which could only hold about 1,000 people, to selling tickets to over 3,000 people, there was a large group at the venue, and this group practically overwhelmed the event because these people paid $20 a ticket to come see Puff Daddy and Heavy D and see this hip-hop basketball game. Unfortunately, because your Puff Daddy and your Heavy D did not do good logistics with the City College of New York, they were not able to have enough security there to effectively control the crowd. Now, at City College, they only had 38 City College campus security officers and 20 private security guards to try to control the crowd in the event. Unfortunately, this group of over 3,000 event goers, they practically overwhelmed that small amount of security force. Now, as a result, this group wound up breaking through several doors, and they surged through the doors hoping to rush into the building after 7 o'clock to get to the gymnasium. Unfortunately, because there was no security to direct people to where to sit in the gymnasium, what happened is this crowd rushed down a short set of stairs leading into the gymnasium, and at the bottom of the stairs there were 4 swinging doors, and 3 of them were closed because they didn't open into the gymnasium, but they opened into another stairwell. And as that crowd surged forwardly like a herd, what happened was the first people caught there were crushed to the point where 8 people wound up dead at the scene, 29 others were injured, and a person died later on from their injuries at St. Luke's Hospital. Now, when I take that further critical examination of what happened at AstroWorld, I see the same similar series of logistical mistakes that your Puff Daddy and Heavy D made back in 1991. Now, in Houston, I'm thinking that your Travis Scott and the event promoters also made several logistical mistakes as they worked with the fire department and they worked with a private security team at the venue and the private security that was hired. Now, at the AstroWorld event, there should have been adequate security to start controlling the event early on. Unfortunately, there was no real security to control the event, as I'm looking at this timeline set up by KHOU 11, and they say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the chaos started because security did not control the crowd who were pushing through the gates and were knocking people down and trampling them as they were bum rushing towards the stage. So there was a major issue as related to controlling the crowds early on, and instead of trying to get the crowds in order early on, what happened was you had a whole group of young people rushing towards the stages at this venue to try to get in first, and that's what happens when you don't have good logistics to plan how people are going to be controlled, when you don't have good barriers and you don't have effective security. What happens is you get a herd of people rushing towards a stage for an event early on, and that that's a very dangerous condition to start your event with when you don't have effective security to control the crowd. And that was a major problem here with this event, was they did not have very good security to control the crowds, and this is why the crowds, which were already starting out of control, really became more of a problem throughout the night. Now, as the day went on, you had other rappers coming on the stage to perform, and as these rappers and entertainers were performing, they would come on and go off, and it looked like things were starting to be okay. But then what happened was, when the countdown timer began as related to Travis Scott's performance, we started to see the crowd pushing towards the front of the concert as the event got closer. So what happened here, looks like to me, was you had a lot of people in a space herded together, and that really was a dangerous thing to even set up for a concert, especially in this age of COVID-19. So I'm looking at this whole crowd, and it looks like it's a recipe for disaster. You have an event just like the one we had here in New York that I believe was definitely oversold, because when you have 50,000 people coming to an event, you have way too many people in a confined space, and when you have 50,000 people in a confined space, you're going to get a frame of what they call herd thinking. And that's what happened probably as Travis Scott came on to the stage. What happened was, as these people who were herded together got together, they probably saw people moving forward, and then the herd mindset kicked in, and as that herd mindset kicked in, people were not thinking critically about their actions. No, they were out here running on the emotions and the energy of the crowd, and as they were running on the emotions and the energy of the crowd, they started pushing forward to get closer to Travis Scott, and that's when people felt like they couldn't move or breathe, and they had to go out here and try to get some people out, just to crowd surf them to safety. That's what one woman says happened to her. And they try to do triage to help out other concert goers. But as this surge was going on, people were just getting into the stampede mindset to move forward. And what happened is that as Travis Scott was performing, you had many of these people who were struggling because they were just practically overwhelmed by the sheer mob of people. And as that mob of people continued to just continue pushing forward, you had people who just couldn't keep up with things, and this is what led to many people practically passing out. And sadly, as some passed out, a few wound up losing their lives. Now, as this was going on, things really started to get hectic, because you had some people saying that the event was they were looking for help. You had others saying that they were being pricked and injected with drugs against their will. So it was a major chaotic event, but it was a chaotic event because you had people like Travis Scott, you had people at the management of the venue, you had the fire chief. Nobody really did good planning at the beginning, and because they didn't plan effectively, this is why we got this chaos at this AstroWorld event, because any critical thinker would tell you that if you're going to have an event like this, 50,000 tickets is way too many for a venue of this size. Now, if you want to have an event like this, you definitely need to have it in a place where the crowd can be better regulated. Not have people out in an open air stage like this, because an open air stage, what this does is you're going to have people all over the place. There's not going to be enough space for people, and people are just, again, because there's no real order started from the beginning to let people know where they should stand. What's going to happen is people are going to just start getting into the herd mindset, because they already saw one group of people go out here and bum rush, and security not set any boundaries for people's safety. they're going to think it's okay to go out here and continue pushing in that type of herd mindset. And that's what happened here as related to this series of events. And nobody was really thinking about anything. And I really believe that there were some in the crowd who were not really thinking critically at all, because when I heard about how young some of the people were who passed away, I mean, there was a 14-year-old who passed away, and then I think about the 9-year-old boy. I mean, I would not be taking my 9-year-old child to an event like this, because I know how dangerous these kinds of events are, and it's just not appropriate a place for a young child because their ears are sensitive. So I'm not taking a 9-year-old to this kind of event. So when I look at this event, there's a whole lot of fault to go around, and there's a lot of accountability that can be spread around equally. I mean, as I see it, your Travis Scott really needs to do a better job of coordination as related to these kinds of events, because he's had trouble with these kinds of events before, and he really needs to understand how to work out logistics, because logistics are very important when you're doing any sort of event, and you have to plan for everything, especially things going bad, and have a contingency so you can deal with things going bad. But your Travis Scott, I believe, and the promoters of this concert, all they were thinking about was making some fast money, and because all they were thinking about was fast money, they were not thinking about other and more important things like the safety of the concert goers. And I also have to say that the fire chief really was not thinking about the safety of people, because he should have come in and said that there was an occupancy standard, because every building out here, they have an occupancy standard, and an occupancy standard tells you how many people can come into a building and that venue be safe. And again, 50,000 tickets, I believe, was way too many tickets to be sold to this event, and having these 50,000 tickets sold to an event that I believe could have probably only held maybe 25,000 people, this also was a part of what led to all of those people losing their lives. This is also a part of it, is that you had a greedy event coordinator who just like P. Diddy and Heavy D did, oversold the event, and this created a dangerous condition. Now, in addition to that, you had, again, these unruly fans who went out here and bum rushed the gate, and they also are just as culpable as related to this event, because if you're going to a concert, you need to respect the rules of security, because the rules of security are meant to protect your safety. Those rules of security are meant to keep you from going out here and being harmed by hazards that are in the venue. I mean, when you're in a venue, there are things there, like the barriers, they're meant to protect you from things that you could get yourself injured by. And again, there's accountability on all sides as related to this tragic event that took place in Houston. And just like here in New York in 1991, the whole incident of this that led to people losing their lives is, I say this, practically almost the same thing. You just have, again, entertainers who are just thinking about entertaining, but not critically thinking about logistics, not critically thinking about safety, not critically thinking about securing and protecting people. And there's blame to go all around, and there was a lot of failures that were all around. Now, your Travis Scott, in the aftermath of this horrific tragedy, is talking about how he wants to pay for the funerals of the 8 people who lost their lives, and talking about trying to make things right. But the whole thing is, he's not only going to be liable for all of those injuries that he caused and those deaths that he's caused, but he's also going to be, I believe, in some serious hot water if they can find he didn't really do good logistic planning. But this whole, again, tragic series of events is reason for everybody to understand how important logistic planning is, because when you work out your logistics, then you can coordinate your staff, like your security, so that you can be able to control the crowd effectively and be able to move
Caught up on a lot at home
into
this past year, but how about catching up on colon cancer screening?
move people into the places they need to be and ensure that everybody is safe at that event and they can have a good time. But when you have people more caught up in their ego and their emotions regarding an event and not critically thinking about important things like logistics, you wind up with a situation like this. Because I believe what happened here with Travis Scott was he and the promoters of this event were so caught up in their ego and their feelings regarding selling out 50,000 tickets, they were not really thinking about putting together a safe show. And I believe that your fire chief really, he should have come out and said, look, there's an occupancy number that you have to meet in order to ensure that there's a safe event. And again, I believe 50,000 people inside of a flat open space is a recipe for disaster, because in that kind of space you're going to get herd thinking, and when you get herd thinking, you're going to have people moving themselves forward, and when they move forward, they're not going to think about the safety of others, especially those like small children, like the 9-year-old who wound up in the hospital and the 14-year-old who wound up losing their life. And that's what happens when you don't have somebody to work out good logistics and be able to plan this. And again, I really feel bad about all those people who wound up losing their lives, but the adults in this situation, they really are accountable on all sides. The promoters of the event, the venue owners, Travis Scott, all of these people are accountable for what happened here, and they all need to be sued, and this needs to be a standard that is set, because there clearly was nothing but carelessness here and negligence as related to things, and those who are negligent need to be held accountable for their actions as related to this series of tragic events that again show us that even 30 years after the stampede that took place here in New York at City College, nobody has really learned from history or studied history. Because if Travis Scott and the people who coordinated his concert had read about what happened with Heavy D and Puff Daddy, maybe they would have approached things a lot differently than they did last weekend. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my books, you can head over to Amazon.com to pick them up. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.